So in the fight against graft, journalism acts as a mouthpiece of society. At least it should act as a mouthpiece for society. We have people working tirelessly on the ground to investigate such matters. But in this raging war against corruption, what is the role of investigative journalism? To tell us more about this, I'm joined now by journalism professor Anton Harber. And Anton, thank you for your time. So I suppose the flashing neon light example of excellent journalism in the face of corruption in recent times, you can't do better than what we saw with the Gupta leaks, right? All that work that went into exposing the state capture project. But does that characterize the role of investigative journalism? Do we always reach that benchmark as journalists, or have there been instances, and perhaps more of those instances, where we didn't live up to that?
Good morning, tirelessly, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. You're absolutely right that we have excellent examples, a long and rich history of excellent investigative journalism in this country that has independently and critically exposed corruption in the apartheid state, in the post-apartheid state, in the democratic state, really played a crucial role and maintained an independence at a time when many institutions, many other institutions of accountability were compromised in the period of state capture. There were parts of our journalism, not all of it, not all of our media outlets, but a number of them that really played a critical role in doing the hard work to expose corruption. But state capture also crept into our media. So we had a fair amount of journalism and media outlets that were compromised during that period. And this is something which we're trying hard to expose and fix. My book, as you may know, that I published last year, was an investigation into the investigative journalists, showing both where we had done really well, but also those sad areas where we were compromised. My book looks in detail at the Sunday Times and the SARS Rogue Unit story, which was really a sad case of one of our biggest and best newspapers being badly compromised by the forces of state capture.
Yeah. Given the fact that, Anton, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry didn't really go down that stream of investigation to look at the impact on the media. I mean, there was a bit of a focus on the SABC a little bit, and then there was a bit of a focus on Gupta-linked media. But it really always felt like it was an aside rather than the main focus. Should there be further work to investigate the extent to which insidious corruption has crept into some newsrooms, or state capture corrupted some of the newsrooms and practices in those newsrooms? Do we need something separate, or do we have enough expectation that enough will come from, Justice Zondo's report that will sort of give us a clearer picture of what has transpired?
Well, yes, it has been secondary. The role of investigative journalists has been raised at the Zondo Commission by Zondo himself and by President Ramaphosa, with a lot of praise for the work investigative journalists did. But there has been a separate inquiry at SANEF, instituted its own inquiry under a retired judge, which made important recommendations on steps the media and journalists need to take to avoid the mistakes and the effects of state capture. I've talked about the Sunday Times, and I'm pleased to say the Sunday Times is under an editor now who's been cleaning up its act considerably. There was the issue of the SABC and the way it was compromised during state capture. And I think we've seen a newly independent, assertive board and new, strong news leadership there get it back on track. It's very important. I think the big problem we are facing is the independent group, to put it frankly. Is the independent group has gone rogue and is really playing a disinformation role, and that's undermining a great deal of the credibility of all the media. And this is something that we as journalists, more than anyone else, as a society, obviously it's a big problem, but it's one we as journalists need to confront, because it's absolutely important that we take the first steps to clean up our own profession.
What would you say to those looking from the outside, that these are just factions within South Africa's news media? Your mention of the independent group, that, you know, there are those who are part of the, what do they call it? The Tumamina Media Group and related factions. And then you have the other, the independent group, who are giving an alternative voice other than the dominant voice, and that, you know, it shouldn't be seen as something to worry about, that we have this independent group which is pursuing a different direction and a style of journalism other than being part of the Tumamina Media Group.
You know, it's perfectly fine to pursue a different view and a different line and a different journalistic approach. But it's very important that you stay within the journalism profession and the systems of accountability, the self-regulatory systems, the press ombudsman, for example, the press council, that we have to monitor and manage professionalism within journalism. And it's very sad that some have broken with that in a way that undermines the profession as a whole. You know, to the public, I would say you need to be very critical in supporting and using and relying on the media that you can trust, and be very careful of those media that fall outside the professional self-regulation. And I think you must be careful about trusting. To journalists, I would say the big lesson of that period was that factionalism, journalism factionalism, undermines the profession, undermines our work, undermines our credibility. We have to be critical and independent like no other institution, and we have to monitor and protect that ourselves. So where journalism has become less independent on all sides of the political equation, I think it's been compromised, and we have to reassert the importance and value of critical independent journalism and journalism institutions.
All right, I've got to thank you for your insights. That's journalism professor there, Anton Harber, weighing in on the role of investigative journalism in as far as exposing corruption is concerned.